Joe Montana stands as one of the most iconic figures in professional football, remembered not just for victories but for the unusual calm he carried into moments that broke others. His career with the San Francisco 49ers reshaped how leadership at quarterback was understood. He was never the loudest presence on the field, nor the most physically imposing, yet his timing, precision, and decision-making under pressure made him seem untouchable during critical drives. Across multiple championships, he helped transform a struggling franchise into a dynasty, collecting Super Bowl titles and MVP honors while setting a standard for clutch performance that still defines the position today. What made Montana unique was not simply success, but the way he achieved it. He operated with a stillness that contrasted sharply with the chaos around him. Defenses collapsed, stadiums erupted, and clock pressure mounted, yet he appeared unchanged, almost detached from urgency. That demeanor earned him the nickname Joe Cool, a title that reflected both admiration and disbelief. Even in the most intense moments, he seemed to process the game like a slow, unfolding calculation rather than a crisis. Yet behind that composure was a life shaped by repetition, pressure, and expectation, beginning long before the NFL stage ever appeared within reach. His story begins far from the spotlight, in a world of discipline, silence, and constant proving. A childhood forged in discipline and distance, Joe Montana's early years were shaped in a working-class environment where effort mattered more than praise. Raised in a household where discipline was constant and emotional approval rare, he learned early that achievement was something to be earned rather than expected. His father emphasized toughness and consistency, reinforcing the idea that mistakes were not to be excused but corrected through repetition. In that atmosphere, football became less a pastime and more a language through which approval might occasionally be earned. Outside his home, life reflected the same austerity. The surroundings were not glamorous. They were defined by routine, labor, and a quiet expectation that success required endurance. Montana spent countless hours practicing alone, turning ordinary spaces into training grounds. A makeshift target in the yard became a symbolic goalpost, where he threw footballs repeatedly, refining accuracy and building confidence through repetition rather than encouragement. Each successful throw felt less like celebration and more like temporary relief from the fear of invisibility. At school, he remained reserved, not drawing attention unless the ball was in his hands. On the field, however, something shifted. His movements became sharper, his focus more intense, and his decision-making unusually calm for someone so young. Even then, coaches noticed his ability to remain steady when others rushed or panicked. That early composure, formed under emotional distance and constant expectation, would become the foundation of everything that followed. The cold test of college football, Montana's transition to Notre Dame, marked a turning point where potential met pressure on a larger stage. At first, he was not the centerpiece of the team, but rather a developing player learning from the sidelines. The environment was competitive, filled with athletes already recognized for their strength and reputation. Montana's role was often limited, yet his attention to detail set him apart. He studied every movement, every mistake, and every rhythm of the offense with quiet intensity. His defining moment in college came during a brutal bowl game played under extreme weather conditions. Illness weakened him, and conditions on the field were harsh enough to challenge even healthy players. Despite this, he entered the game when his team was struggling significantly. What followed became a demonstration of resilience and control rather than physical dominance. He executed plays with precision, gradually shifting momentum through careful reads and calm execution. As the game progressed, his presence changed the emotional tone of the team. Teammates who had appeared defeated began to respond to his steadiness. In the final moments, a decisive drive resulted in a comeback victory that would later be remembered as one of the defining performances of his college career. For observers, it was an introduction to a player who did not rely on spectacle, but on persistence and clarity under pressure, overlooked in the professional transition. Despite his college success, Montana entered the professional league without the attention given to top draft prospects. Many evaluators questioned his physical attributes, expressing doubts about his size, arm strength, and overall durability. As a result, he was not selected among the earliest picks, instead, entering the league later than many expected for a player of his future significance. When he joined the San Francisco 49ers, the team itself was in a transitional phase. Stability was not yet established, and competition for the quarterback position was intense. Montana arrived quietly, carrying few expectations from outside observers. Inside the organization, he was viewed as a developmental player rather than an immediate solution. Veterans were uncertain about his ability to handle professional speed and complexity. However, Montana's approach did not change with external perception. He maintained routine discipline, arriving early and leaving late, studying systems and refining timing with receivers. His practice habits were methodical rather than expressive, focusing on repetition until movement became instinctive. Coaches noticed that he processed information quickly and rarely repeated the same mistake. Though not yet a starter, he began to build trust through consistency rather than reputation. The foundation of his professional identity was being formed quietly, without attention, in practices that rarely reached public view. The system that shaped a legend. A major shift in Montana's career came with the arrival of a coaching system built on timing, precision, and short controlled passes. This structure emphasized rhythm over raw power, aligning perfectly with his strengths. Under this philosophy, success depended on reading defenses quickly and delivering the ball accurately within narrow windows of opportunity. Montana adapted with remarkable speed. He absorbed the system not as a set of plays but as a language of movement and anticipation. Instead of relying on long improvisation, he learned to trust structure, spacing, and timing. His throws became less about force and more about placement, often arriving exactly where receivers needed them at the precise moment they broke into open space. The coaching staff recognized that his mental processing was as important as his physical execution. He studied film obsessively, identifying patterns in defensive behavior and adjusting his decisions accordingly. Over time, this preparation allowed him to operate with efficiency that seemed almost instinctive during games. His relationship with coaching guidance became central to his development. Trust grew on both sides, forming a quiet partnership built on shared understanding rather than vocal leadership. The system did not just utilize his skills, it amplified them, transforming potential into consistent performance. Waiting behind the starting line before becoming the team's primary quarterback, Montana spent years in a role that required patience and restraint. He was often present on the sidelines during games, observing rather than leading. This period tested his resilience more than any physical challenge, as he had to remain prepared without certainty of opportunity. Practices became his proving ground. While others rotated through visible roles, he refined his skills in repetition, treating every snap as preparation for an uncertain future. His focus remained steady, even when recognition was minimal. He understood that opportunity in professional sports often arrives unpredictably, and readiness is the only guarantee of survival. Within the locker room, opinions about him varied. Some teammates underestimated him due to limited game exposure, while others noticed his quiet discipline. Coaches, however, saw incremental improvement in his decision-making and consistency. He rarely displayed frustration, instead channeling uncertainty into preparation. This period shaped his mental resilience. It reinforced the idea that success is not always immediate and that visibility does not define value. By the time opportunity finally arrived, he had accumulated years of preparation without public acknowledgement, creating a foundation stronger than external validation. The emergence of a starter. When Montana finally assumed the starting role, expectations remained cautious. Yet his transition into leadership unfolded with surprising smoothness. He approached the position not with urgency but with clarity, executing plays with precision that gradually shifted team dynamics. His presence introduced stability, allowing the offense to function with greater confidence. Early performances revealed his ability to remain composed under pressure. He did not attempt to force dramatic plays unnecessarily. Instead, he prioritized efficiency and decision-making. This approach reduced errors and improved consistency across drives. Teammates began to respond to his calm leadership style, trusting his judgment in critical moments. As the season progressed, his influence grew beyond statistics. He became a stabilizing force during difficult games, particularly in late stages where control mattered most. Coaches observed that his ability to remain unaffected by chaos allowed others to perform more freely. By the end of the season, he was no longer viewed as a temporary solution but as a legitimate leader. His rise was not marked by sudden explosion, but by gradual recognition earned through consistency, discipline, and situational intelligence. the defining moments of championship football. Montana's career reached defining heights during high-pressure championship games where outcomes depended on final drives. In these moments, he displayed an unusual ability to elevate performance without visible strain. One of the most iconic instances came during a championship game where his team trailed late in the fourth quarter. Under intense defensive pressure and limited time, he orchestrated a methodical drive down the field. Each pass was executed with precision, advancing the team incrementally rather than through risk-heavy plays. The final sequence ended with a decisive touchdown that secured victory and became one of the most remembered moments in football history. What stood out was not just the result, but his demeanor. While others celebrated explosively, he remained composed, almost reflective, as if processing the sequence rather than reacting to it. This contrast between external chaos and internal calm became a defining characteristic of his legacy. Such moments reinforced his reputation as a performer who thrived when stakes were highest. He became associated with reliability in impossible situations, a reputation that would follow him throughout his career and define how future generations viewed clutch performance. The cost of repeated impact. Behind the success, Montana's career involved years of physical strain that accumulated over time. The demands of professional football exposed him to repeated high-impact collisions, resulting in injuries that required ongoing management. Shoulders, knees, and neck areas endured continuous stress, and recovery became a constant part of his routine. Despite these challenges, he continued to perform at a high level. Pain management became part of preparation, and endurance was as important as skill execution. Medical staff often noted his ability to function through discomfort that would sideline others. Over time, however, the accumulation of injuries began to shape his physical condition outside the field. Routine movements required more effort, and recovery periods lengthened. What once felt temporary became persistent. Still, he rarely expressed frustration publicly. His focus remained on performance rather than complaint. The discipline that defined his early life now extended into how he handled physical decline. Even as his body absorbed the cost of longevity, his commitment to the game remained unchanged. The weight of legacy and expectation. As Montana's career progressed, success created a new kind of pressure. Every performance was measured against previous achievements, particularly iconic moments that had already entered football history. This expectation transformed consistency into challenge, where maintaining excellence became as difficult as achieving it initially. He continued to lead his team to victories, including additional championship appearances that reinforced his status as one of the sport's defining figures. Yet with each success came heightened scrutiny. The margin for error narrowed as reputation expanded. Internally, he was aware of the comparison between past peak moments and present performance. While outwardly composed, he understood that legacy creates its own burden. Each game carried echoes of earlier triumphs, making repetition of greatness an ongoing test rather than a completed achievement. Despite this, he remained steady. His leadership did not rely on emotional display but on execution. Even as expectations grew heavier, he maintained the same disciplined approach that had defined his earliest days in the league. The quiet end of an era. As time advanced, Montana eventually stepped away from professional football, concluding a career defined by precision, resilience, and historic achievement. Retirement did not erase his influence. Instead, it solidified his place in the sport's history as one of its most effective and composed leaders. Life beyond the field brought a different rhythm, less defined by urgency and competition. Physical reminders of his career remained, as years of impact had left lasting effects. Movement became slower, recovery more deliberate, and daily routines adjusted to the realities of accumulated strain. Yet his legacy remained intact. The moments he created under pressure continued to be studied, referenced, and remembered as benchmarks of excellence. His name became synonymous with composure in critical situations, influencing how future quarterbacks were evaluated and trained. In reflection, his journey represents more than statistics or trophies. It reflects a career built on patience, discipline, and the ability to remain steady when everything demanded urgency. Joe Montana's story endures not because it was easy, but because it was executed with a level of calm that rarely exists under pressure.